Earth was silent. From the blackness of space, the planet looked like a tired giant, wounded and broken. The blue ocean still shimmered faintly under the pale sunlight, but the scars of war marked its surface. Great cities lay dark, their lights gone, their towers crumbled. The skies were not skies at all, but a graveyard. Burnt wreckage drifted above the world. Hulks of warships, broken satellites, shattered stations. They turned slowly, endlessly, in orbit, a ring of death around humanity's home. No voices called out. No music, no laughter, no sounds of life. Only the empty crackle of old transmissions, repeating into the void. Then, through the silence, one voice returned. A voice carried by static, strained and heavy, but alive. "This is Commander Eric," it said. "To any human left alive, Earth is not yet lost." The message pulsed out into the stars, weak but stubborn, like the last heartbeat of a dying soldier. Down below, Earth was not empty. Fires still burned in hidden valleys. Small enclaves of survivors clung to life, waiting for hope that had never come. In orbit, scattered across the graveyard of wrecks, floated what remained of humanity's defenders. The last fleet. They were not many. 20 ships, maybe less. Most were torn and limping, patched with scrap, engines coughing black smoke. A few were giants, once proud battleships, but their hulls were scarred, their weapons cracked. Others were smaller, frigates, converted freighters, even old mining barges armed with whatever guns they could find. Once, they had been part of a 1,000-ship navy. Now, there were the scraps of history, floating above the ashes of their people. And yet, they waited. Inside the flagship Resolute, Commander Eric stood before the darkened bridge window, staring at Earth. His reflection looked back at him, hollow eyes, a scar across his jaw, the heavy weight of too many battles lost. Behind him, the crew worked in silence, repairing systems, checking weapons, listening to the sensors. They all knew what he knew. The silence would not last. For weeks, they had been watching, waiting. The enemy had left after the last great assault, pulling back into the blackness beyond Jupiter. No one knew why. Some hoped it meant the Krail had grown tired or had found another world to burn. Others, like Eric, knew better. The enemy was not gone. The enemy was gathering. He turned as a young officer spoke, her voice trembling. "So, long-range scanners show movement beyond the outer rim." The word struck like a blade. The bridge grew colder, the silence heavier. Eric walked forward, his boots echoing in the hollow chamber, and looked at the display. A faint red mark blinked at the edge of the solar system. Then another. Then 10 more. The marks multiplied, spreading like blood across the screen. "How many?" Eric asked quietly. The officer swallowed. "Too many to count, sir." The Krail were returning. Eric said nothing. He simply stayed at the screen, his jaw tightening. He had known this moment would come, but seeing it made his heart sink like a stone. The Krail did not come in small groups. They came in storms. Endless, merciless, patient. They had already burned Mars, shattered the colonies on Titan, and turned the sky of Europa into glass. Earth had been their prize, but Earth had survived the first storm. Barely. Now, the second was coming. Outside, among the drifting wreckage, the last fleet stared. Engines lit, weak but burning. One by one, the ships aligned into formation. Some crews whispered prayers. Others stayed silent, their faces cold, their eyes on the planet below. They all understood. This was the end. In the darkness between worlds, the Krail grew closer. First, faint shapes against the stars. Black ships, jagged and vast, like shadows given form. Their hulls pulsed with sickly green light, glowing like scars across the night. More and more appeared, slipping from the deep void, filling the darkness with their endless mass. The bridge crew watched as the scanner filled with red. "They outnumber us 10 to 1, someone whispered. "Try 50 to 1, another said, voice flat. Still, the fleet did not turn away. Commander Eric stood straight, his hands clasped behind him. "Signal the fleet," he said. "All ships prepare for engagement. We make our stand here." The order rang across the comms, reaching every ship, every deck, every corner of the broken fleet. Men and women looked up from their stations, from their bunks, from their weapons. No one smiled. No one cheered. But none disobeyed. They had nowhere else to go. Earth was behind them. Humanity was behind them. If they failed, there would be nothing left. The silence outside seemed to deepen, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath. Then the enemy moved. The first wave of Krail ships broke away from the mass, gliding forward like hunters in the dark. Their engines pulsed with green fire, their weapons already glowing. The air on the Resolute's bridge seemed to tighten, every heart beating faster, every hand gripping steel. Eric closed his eyes, for just a moment, and whispered a name, someone long gone, lost to the war. Then he opened them, sharp as blades, and gave the only command left. Hold the line. The fleet spread its wings across the night, tiny against the endless tide of black ships. Fighters launched from damaged hangars, streaks of light diving into the dark. Cannons roared to life, their fire casting brief suns across the void. The battle had not yet begun, but already the silence was broken. Earth's last heartbeat thundered into the night, and far beyond, the storm of the Krail closed in. The fleet was all that remained of humanity's pride. Once, the Terran Navy had stretched across the stars, thousands of ships guarding colonies from Mars to the edge of the Kuiper Belt. But now, what circled above Earth were broken shadows of that former glory. 20 ships. That was all. The flagship Resolute, scarred from too many battles, led them. Behind her trailed battered destroyers, converted freighters with crude armor plating, and even a handful of mining rigs turned into makeshift warships. Their engines flickered. Their shields barely held charge. Their weapons were patched together with whatever spare parts could be found in the ruins of old stations. Yet the crews aboard these wrecks carried something stronger than steel. They carried defiance. On the Resolute's bridge, Commander Eric stood before his people. He had given the order. Now came the harder part, keeping hope alive when every number said they were doomed. All hands, his voice carried over the fleet-wide comms. We stand today as the last line of defense. The Krail will come with numbers. They will come with power. But they will find no fear here. They will find warriors. They will find humans. And if this is to be our end, then let it be the kind of end they will never forget. His words echoed through metal corridors, down into the hearts of engineers, pilots, gunners, and civilians who had taken up arms. Some closed their eyes, steadying themselves. Others clenched fists around worn rifles or brushed fingers across family photos taped to consoles. None of them believed they would live to see another sunrise. But all of them believed in Earth. In the hangars, fighters rested in long, crooked rows. Pilots ran hands across the hulls of their crafts, whispering promises. Mechanics tightened bolts on weapons that should have been retired years ago. These ships had no right to fly into battle again. Yet they would, because they must. Eric moved to the strategy table, where a hologram of the solar system glowed. Red marks spread across the outer rim, growing thicker by the hour. He traced a line from Jupiter to Earth, his jaw tight. There was no avoiding what was coming. Beside him, Admiral Solara, the last surviving flag officer of the Terran Navy, studied the data. She was older, her hair white, her face marked with deep lines of exhaustion. But her eyes burned with the same fire that had carried her through a lifetime of wars. "They'll try to break us quick," she said. "Hit hard, crush morale, then bring their superweapon to bay." Eric nodded. "We hold them at range. Make them fight for every kilometer. Bleed them before they can reach the planet. It won't be enough." Eric's gaze hardened. "It doesn't have to be. It just has to be long enough." Neither spoke of what waited below the planet's surface. The Titan Spee was a rumor even among the fleet, a secret kept buried until no other choice remained. To speak of it too soon would invite despair if it failed. In the crew quarters, laughter broke out for the first time in days. It was short, rough, half nervous. A group of soldiers sat around a cracked table, sharing what little rations remained. They talked of things long gone, football games under real skies, the taste of fresh fruit, the sound of rain on city rooftops. Each memory was like a small shield against the darkness pressing in from space. Elsewhere, a child, one of the few civilians taken aboard for safety, asked her mother a question no one wanted to answer. Will we win? The mother smiled weakly and brushed the girl's hair from her face. We'll fight. That's what matters. Across the fleet, thousands of such moments unfolded. Moments of faith, moments of courage, moments that stitched the fragile remains of humanity together. And then, a signal. The fleet's long-range scanners lit with red. The Krail were no longer a distant threat. Their ships had entered the outer system in force. An hour, perhaps less, before the first wave reached Mars orbit. A cold silence swept the Resolute's bridge. Everyone turned to Eric. Signal all ships, he said firmly. Form the battle line. This is where humanity stands. Engines roared to life, filling the void with faint trails of light. The last fleet shifted into position, spreading in a thin arc across the darkness, every ship angled toward the incoming storm. On the screens, the enemy grew clearer, vast, jagged ships, glowing with green fire, blotting out the stars as they came. The last human fleet waited. The storm was almost here. The enemy came like a shadow swallowing the stars. At first, there were only faint red signals on scanners, distant blips flickering at the edge of the solar system. But now, with every passing hour, the signals grew clearer, stronger, closer. One by one, the Krail ships emerged from the void, dark giants with jagged hulls, glowing veins of sickly green energy running across their frames. They drifted forward in perfect silence, cold and patient, like predators circling prey. From the bridge of the Resolute, Commander Eric watched the display. The screen showed hundreds of ships, and still more pouring in from beyond the system. The red markers spread across the hologram until it looked as though the stars themselves were bleeding. They've brought everything, whispered Lieutenant Kane, his voice tight. Every ship they have. No, Admiral Solara corrected, her face carved from stone. This is only their vanguard. The words chilled the crew. If this was only the beginning, what followed would be endless. The Krail had always been merciless, but this time, their fleet moved with new purpose. They did not scatter across the system to raid colonies. They did not pause to burn moons or mine outposts. They came straight for Earth. It meant only one thing. The end was here. A sharp tone cut through the bridge. The sensor officer sat up, eyes wide, reading something massive at the heart of their formation. The display shifted, highlighting a colossal ship among the swarm. It dwarfed even the largest of the Krail warships, its surface bristling with twisted spires, its center glowing with a slow, pulsing light. Admiral Solara leaned closer, her face pale. Their superweapon. Eric's jaw tightened. The one they used on the colonies. Yes, and worse. Look at the energy readings. It could shatter a planet. A heavy silence fell. They all remembered the reports from the Titan colonies, before the transmissions had gone dark. A single shot, fired across thousands of kilometers, had split the ice moon in half. Millions had died in seconds. If such a weapon fired at Earth, it would not just kill, it would erase everything. The crew stayed at the image of their homeworld on the main screen. Fragile, beautiful, and so very small against the void. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Eric broke the silence. They mean to end us completely. He did not shout. He did not need to. His calm certainty struck harder than any roar. The crew straightened in their seats, their fears sharpening into resolve. All ships are in formation, sir, came the report. Hold steady, Eric ordered. Do not break until I give the word. Outside, the fleet formed a thin wall before Earth. Engines glowed faintly as ships aligned, their weapons warming, their crews silent at their stations. Beyond them, the Krail advanced like an oncoming storm. On one of the smaller frigates, Captain Dern clasped his crew's shoulders, moving from one station to the next. Remember what we fight for, he said. Your families, your homes, Earth itself. Do not let fear guide you. Let anger guide you. In the cramped cockpit of a fighter, pilot Raina touched the small pendant hanging from her neck, a gift from her brother, lost in the first wave of the war. "For you," she whispered, before sealing her helmet and powering up her ship. Across the fleet, men and women prepared in silence. They knew the odds. They knew this battle was not one they could survive. But survival was no longer the goal. Holding the line was. On the Resolute, the tension thickened as the Krail fleet drew closer. Every second felt stretched, every breath heavier. The first enemy ships crossed Mars' orbit, their shadows blotting out the planet's dead surface. "They'll be on us in less than an hour," the sensor officer reported. Eric nodded slowly, eyes never leaving the screen. "Then in an hour," he said, "the last war of humanity begins." The Krail did not slow. Their superweapon pulsed with brighter light, as if eager for destruction. Green fire ran along the hulls of their cruisers, their weapons humming to life. Admiral Solara studied the readings, her hands clasped behind her back. "When they fire that weapon," she murmured, "Earth will not survive." Eric turned to her, his face grim. "Then we'll make sure they never get the chance." He opened a fleet-wide channel. His voice rang out across every ship, every deck, every heart. "This is Commander Eric. You see them. You know what they've done. They burned our colonies. They slaughtered our families. They thought we would break. But here we stand, over Earth, over home, as the last of our kind. We do not run. We do not surrender. We fight. And if today is the day humanity falls, then we fall as warriors." A cheer rose across the comms. Rough, raw, desperate, but fierce. The Krail fleet loomed larger now, filling the void with their endless black shapes. Their formation stretched like a blade aimed straight at Earth. The humans waited, their engines burning faintly, their weapons locked. And then, the first wave of Krail ships broke forward. The storm had arrived. The first clash came like thunder in the void. For long minutes, the two forces stared at one another across the gulf of space, human ships burning faintly before Earth, and the endless black tide of the Krail pressing forward. The silence was unbearable, stretched so tight that every breath felt like it might snap it. Then, without warning, the storm broke. The leading Krail cruisers surged ahead, green lights spilling from their weapons. Their first salvo came in a wave of burning lances, slicing across the dark. The void lit up like a sunrise made of fire. "Brace!" shouted the sensor officer aboard the Resolute. The beams ripped past, tearing through the front line. A human destroyer exploded in a blinding flash, its pieces scattering like sparks across the fleet. A converted freighter took 2 hits amidships, breaking in half before its crew even had time to scream. But the humans answered. The battleship Ironclad roared to life, her cannons spitting fire into the void. Explosions burst across a Krail cruiser's hull, tearing away its black armor until it cracked in two. Fighters spilled out from damaged carriers, darting between enemy lines like angry hornets, loosing missiles into the swarm. The battle was chaos, fire against fire, steel against steel. Every second, ships vanished in fireballs, their deaths painting the void with fleeting suns. On the Resolute's bridge, Commander Eric gripped the railing, his knuckles white. "Push forward," he barked. "Don't give them space. Close the gap. Make them bleed." The humans obeyed. Engines flared as the last fleet surged forward, ramming headlong into the storm. Smaller ships weaved through gaps, unloading everything they had. Torpedoes streaked across the black, smashing into enemy hulls and ripping through their course. Some frigates, too damaged to fight, drove themselves straight into the Krail line, detonating in suicidal bursts that took enemy vessels with them. For a heartbeat, it almost looked even. For a heartbeat, the humans struck like wolves, fast and furious, tearing into their prey. But the Krail were endless. For every alien cruiser that burned, 2 more slid forward. Their formations were perfect, their weapons precise, their sheer numbers overwhelming. Green fire scythed through human ranks, one ship after another. On the carrier Vanguard, alarms screamed as enemy beams carved through her engines. The captain gave the only order left: launch everything we have, then ram them. The carrier's hangars erupted as fighters screamed into the black. Then the Vanguard's massive frame accelerated, its wounded engines burning hot one last time. She slammed into a Krail battleship, the collision shattering both into pieces that tumbled through the void. The explosion shook even the Resolute's hull. Crew members looked up from their stations, eyes wide, but Eric only clenched his jaw tighter. "That's how we fight," he growled. Yet for every act of courage, the cost mounted. On the flank, 3 frigates were cut apart in seconds. A mining barge turned warship fought bravely, its crude cannons hammering into an enemy destroyer, but it was swatted aside like a child's toy. The black tide closed around the humans, shrinking their line, bleeding them with every passing moment. "Half our fleet is gone," Admiral Solara reported grimly, her voice steady despite the chaos. Eric's eyes burned as he stared at the screen. "Then the half that's left will fight twice as hard." Outside, fighters darted between the giants, their trails weaving like fireflies in the storm. Pilot Rayna fired her last missile into a cruiser's bridge, then banked hard, weaving between beams of green fire. Her ship shook, alarms blaring, but she kept going. She had nothing left but her guns and her will. For every pilot like Rayna, there were dozens who never made it back. Tiny sparks winked out in silence, each one a human life snuffed out against the endless dark. But still, the humans did not break. The void between Earth and the enemy was no longer empty. It burned with wreckage, with fire, with death. And at its center, humanity's last fleet clawed and bit with everything it had. For hours, the battle raged. Ships slammed together in suicidal fury. Weapons screamed until they burned out. Fighters fought with nothing but desperation. The Krail advanced slowly, steadily, step by bloody step, but never without cost. And in the heart of the chaos, Commander Eric's words echoed in every soldier's mind. Hold the line. It was not a battle they could win, but it was a battle they would fight until there was nothing left to give. The battle raged, hour after hour, a storm of fire and steel across the void. The humans fought like wolves, snapping and tearing at the endless tide. But even wolves tire when the pack grows too small. One by one, their ships fell. The ironclad, pride of the old Terran Navy, was swallowed in green fire, her great guns silenced forever. The frigate Aurora tried to shield a civilian transport, only to be split in two by a beam of sickly light. Fighter squadrons dwindled, their trails burning out as the pilots were consumed. By the 4th hour, less than half the fleet remained. The sky above Earth was no longer a battlefield. It was a graveyard. Wreckage drifted in thick clouds, pieces of human and alien ships alike tumbling silently. On the Resolute, alarms screamed in every corridor. Sparks rained from overhead panels, smoke filled the bridge, and the crew shouted over the roar of failing systems. Shields down to 20%. Engine 3 offline. Casualties mounting across all decks. Still, Commander Eric stood tall. His uniform was scorched, his face streaked with ash, but his voice was iron. Hold formation. We don't break. Yet even as he shouted, he knew the truth. They were breaking. The Krail pressed closer with every wave, their formations perfect, their weapons merciless. And then came the worst of it. The weapon at the heart of their fleet began to stay. The superweapon. It pulsed brighter now, glowing like a sick heart ready to burst. The energy readings spiked off the charts, bathing the void in a sickly green light. The bridge crew watched in horror. "They're targeting Earth," cried the sensor officer. "No," Admiral Solara said quietly, her voice trembling for the first time. "Not Earth. The Moon." The realization sank like ice. The pulse erupted. A beam of unimaginable power tore across the black, striking the moon in a single, perfect line. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the moon cracked. Light spilled through the fracture, brighter than any sunrise. The soundless explosion tore it apart, ripping chunks of rock into space. In moments, the moon was gone, shattered into a billion pieces, its remains scattering like broken glass across the night. On Earth below, people looked up at the sky and screamed. Where once the moon had watched over them, only fire and dust remained. On the Resolute, silence gripped the bridge. Every crew member stared at the view, eyes wide, faces pale. Some gasped, some cursed, others simply froze, unable to process what they had seen. Eric clenched his fists until his knuckles bled. His voice was raw when he spoke. They want us to see it. They want us to know what waits for Earth. The sensor officer turned, her face pale. If they fire again, they won't get the chance, Eric snapped. His eyes blazed, but his voice was steady. Not while we still draw breath. But inside, he felt the same fear that gripped them all. The moon was gone. If Earth followed, humanity would not just die. It would vanish, leaving nothing behind but dust. In that moment, despair threatened to swallow the fleet whole. Ships fell back, their formation shaky. Pilots' voices cracked over the comms. A few captains whispered of retreat, of running to the outer stars. Even the bravest hearts faltered, seeing the impossible power of the Krail unleashed. And then came a voice. Admiral Solara, standing tall despite the ruin around her, raised her chin. "Listen to me," she shouted across the fleet channel. "They think we are broken. They think the moon's death is the death of our will. But they are wrong. We are still here. We are still human. And until the last ship falls, we fight." Her words cut through the fear like a blade. Across the fleet, men and women straightened. Despair hardened into fury. They would not run. They could not run. There was nowhere left to run to. And in the silence that followed, a discovery came. From the surface of Earth, a signal pulsed, ancient, buried deep within the planet, long forgotten. Engineers aboard the Resolute stared as the data scrolled across their screens. "So," one whispered, disbelief in his voice. There's something down there. A weapon. Old, but still alive." Eric's heart thundered in his chest. He had heard rumors, long ago, of a secret project abandoned when the war first began. Something built into the very bones of Earth itself. "The Titan Spear," Solara murmured. Her eyes widened. "It's real." Hope flickered. Small, fragile, but alive. Eric turned sharply to his crew, his voice a command of fire. "Signal the fleet. Buy us time. Every minute we hold, the Titan Spear awakens. And when it fires, the Krail will learn that Earth is not yet lost." The humans, broken and blooded, rallied once more. But deep in his heart, Eric knew the truth. They were out of time. The moon was gone, but Earth still turned below. And for as long as Earth turned, humanity would fight. The Titan Spear, an ancient project buried beneath the planet's crust, was their last hope. Built in secret during the earliest years of the war, it was said to be a planetary defense cannon capable of piercing fleets. But no one had ever seen it fire. No one even knew if it still worked. It had been abandoned, left to sleep in the dark for decades. Now, with the Krail closing in and the moon shattered, it was their only chance. Inside Earth's hidden bunkers, engineers scrambled to life. Vast machines long silent hummed again. Cavernous tunnels lit with pale blue light as power surged through ancient conduits. The Titan Spear awoke like a beast stirred from its slumber. But it was not ready yet. It needed time. Time the fleet had to buy with blood. On the Resolute, Commander Eric stood at the strategy table, his face lit by the flickering glow of the battle map. Red filled the display, enemy ships pressing closer, layer after layer, while the blue icons of humanity dwindled to a handful. "How long until the spear is charged?" he demanded. 30 minutes, minimum," came the reply. Eric's jaw tightened. 30 minutes was an eternity in this battle. He opened a fleet-wide channel, his voice steady though the weight of it nearly broke him. "All ships. The weapon beneath Earth is real. The Titan Spear will awaken, but it needs time. That means we hold the line. No retreat. No hesitation. Every second we fight, every life we give, brings us closer to saving Earth. This is our last gamble. Make it count." His words rolled across the comms, reaching every crew, every soldier, every frightened civilian still aboard. Silence followed, then a chorus of voices, ragged but fierce. "For Earth!" Engines flared as what remained of the fleet surged forward once more. The battle entered its most desperate stage. The humans no longer fought to win. They fought to delay. Frigates hurled themselves into enemy formations, detonating their cores in brilliant explosions that tore through Krail cruisers. Fighters formed suicide wings, diving straight into enemy carriers with guns blazing until they vanished in fire. Damaged ships turned their final moments into weapons, crashing into the enemy like falling stars. Every sacrifice carved away precious seconds. Seconds the Titan's speed devoured hungrily as it charged. On the Resolute, alarms shrieked as enemy beams slammed into her hull. Metal screamed, decks buckled, but still she endured. Eric gripped the railing, refusing to let despair show. Beside him, Admiral Solara's voice was steady steel. They are trying to break through. If they reach Earth before the SPI is ready. They won't, Eric cut her off. His eyes blazed. Not while I still draw breath. Beyond the bridge, the Titan's SPI stirred louder. Deep within Earth, colossal machines rotated, aligning the ancient cannon. Power built in waves, surging like a heartbeat, stronger and stronger. The ground trembled as if the planet itself prepared to strike. 10 minutes. The engineer's voice crackled across comms. We need 10 more minutes. 10 minutes. 10,000 lifetimes in the fire of battle. The Krail pressed harder, their ships pouring green fire into the thinning human line. One enemy battleship broke through, surging toward Earth. The Resolute turned to meet it. Full burn. Eric shouted, "Ram them if we have to." Engines screamed as the Resolute hurled herself into the path of the enemy giant. Cannons thundered, missiles flared, but still the alien ship advanced. At the last moment, two smaller human destroyers, already burning wrecks, slammed themselves into its flanks. The explosion consumed all three vessels in a blaze that lit the void. The enemy slowed, staggered, but more poured through behind it. 5 minutes, came the report from Earth. The Titan spear was almost ready, but the fleet was nearly gone. On the Resolute, sparks rained from shattered panels, smoke choking the air. Half the crew was gone. Still, Eric stood tall. He opened a final channel, his voice reaching every surviving ship, every fighter still alive. "This is it," he said. "One last charge. We'll hold them back until the spear fires. No fear, no hesitation. Humanity depends on us in this moment. If we fall buying victory." Across the broken fleet, engines lit. Ships turned, weapons glowing, pilots whispering their last words to the void. The humans surged forward one final time, ramming themselves headfirst into the storm. And deep beneath the Earth, the Titan spear reached full charge. It was almost ready to fire. The void burned with wreckage. The last human ships were gone or dying, drifting in fire and silence. But still, they fought. The Titan's spear pulsed beneath Earth's crust, its power finally awakened. The weapon was ready, but it needed a clear shot. The Krail flagship, vast and jagged, loomed at the heart of their fleet, its superweapon glowing like a burning wound. If the Titan spear could destroy that ship, the rest might falter. If it failed, Earth would fall. On the Resolute, alarms howled. The ship was barely holding together. Fires raged across her decks, her shields gone, her engines failing. Half her bridge crew lay dead or wounded. Yet Commander Eric still stood, his hands gripping the railing, his eyes locked on the enemy flagship. "They are charging their weapon again," Admiral Solara warned. Her voice was hoarse, but steady. "One more strike like the moon, and Earth is finished." Eric said nothing at first. He stared at the colossal shape of the enemy's ship, its hull crawling with sickly green light, its superweapon humming louder and louder. Then he drew a breath, slow and heavy. "Helm," he said quietly, "set a collision course." The crew froze. "Sir." "You heard me," Eric snapped. "All power to the engines. We ram them. Now." The bridge went silent. Everyone understood. This was no tactic. This was sacrifice. Eric turned to Solara. For the first time, the steel in his face softened. "Tell Ith. Tell them humanity stood its ground." Solara's eyes shone, but she nodded. "I'll see it done." The Resolute's engines flared one last time, screaming against their broken hull. The ship hurled itself forward, straight toward the Krail flagship. Enemy fire lashed across her sides, tearing through armor, but still she came. Deck by deck, the Resolute burned, but still she came. Eric stood tall, never looking away from the enemy. His last words rang across the comms, a voice carried to every surviving fighter, every last soldier, every bunker on Earth. Hold the line. The Resolute slammed into the Krail flagship, a thunderclap in the void. Metal ripped, fire consumed both ships. For a heartbeat, the enemy's superweapon faltered, its glow dimming. That was the moment. From deep beneath Earth, the Titan's spear roared. The planet itself seemed to shudder as the colossal cannon fired, a beam of pure light erupting from the surface and spearing into the sky. It tore through space like the wrath of the world itself, slamming into the crippled Krail flagship. The beam pierced the enemy ship clean through. The flagship shuddered, split, and then exploded in a cataclysm of green fire. The shockwave rippled outward, tearing through the surrounding Krail fleet, ripping their formations apart. Across the void, alien ships faltered. Some burned, some broke, and some, seeing their heart destroyed, fled back into the darkness from which they had come. Silence fell. The battlefield was a graveyard of wrecks, human and Krail alike. The last fleet was gone, reduced to drifting husks and glowing embers. Only fragments of the Resolute remained, still burning, tumbling slowly through the dark. But Earth still turned below. Earth still lived. In hidden bunkers, survivors wept as they looked to the sky, seeing no moon, no fleet, but knowing they were not yet lost. Humanity had survived the storm. On the battered remains of a small fighter, pilot Raina floated in the wreckage, her cockpit cracked, her systems failing. She stared at the glow fading where the Titan spear had fired and whispered, barely audible, "We held the line." And in the silence that followed, as the stars returned to their watchful stillness, a single message echoed faintly across the void. Humanity still lives, and Earth still stands.